Welcome to One on One. I'm Phil Tillman, your host, and today we're delighted to welcome into our studios the mayor of the city of Salisbury, Jim Ireton.
Hi, Phil.
Welcome.
Glad to be
And
back.
this is the time of year, and we're interviewing everybody who's running. And as the incumbent, we're asking you and giving you the same opportunity everybody else has. So, why are you running?
I'm so excited about this. I'm more excited about this race actually than I was about 2009.
Really?
Simply because there are a slew of things that have been accomplished here in the city. Things that have to do with the river, things that have to do with the crime rate, things that have to do with the amount of how we spend taxpayers' money, things happening downtown, that I'm just real excited to be able to say that I want to stick around and as Councilwoman Shields always says, take these things to fruition.
Mm-hmm. Well, talk about the assets of the city of Salisbury. Mm-hmm. What are the assets? When somebody asks you, you go to MML mm-hmm. and you're from Salisbury and they want to know what they brag about their community. What do you say about the assets?
I brag that we are almost 33,000 people now, up almost 33% from the last census. Mm. We're 44% minority. I think that diversity is incredibly rich for our city. We have an incredible zoo, we have an incredible hospital, we have an incredible university, we have an incredible university down the road, we have an incredible community college that sits right at the edge of the city limits, has city water and sewer services. We have a great shorebirds team, all of those things. But what I really talk about is the change in Salisbury. The last 4 years with a 40% drop in the violent crime rate with the help of all of our Safe Streets partners. And the fact that the violent crime rate has dropped 21% in the last 10 years, while our population has gone up 33%. Mm-hmm. That is almost statistically, that's an anomaly. It is huge. It is good news. I wish I could get somebody to report on it, but good news doesn't sell. And that's why you run again, because people are constantly beating on Salisbury about deficiencies, are constantly beating on Salisbury about what, they want it to be this, they want it to be that. We were named a 2010 All-America City by the National Urban League just the other day with County Executive Rick Pollitt for the 6th time through America's Promise being named a 100 best places mm-hmm. to raise a child. I think that there's a gap between those of us who see Salisbury as just a thriving place with so many great things to do and so many great things to be involved with, and the people that are just naysayers and everything is no and everything is negative. And I think that might be a little bit to the reason for that might be the 24-hour news cycle, the ability to use the computer to have everyone's opinions out there. And it just seems like negative wins. But I'm not going to let negative win this time. I'm going to win this race because we deserve somebody who's a cheerleader, and I'm our cheerleader.
Well, you are an absolutely fantastic cheerleader for the city, and you've just listed the things that we have to cheer about.
Yeah.
There are challenges.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the challenges and what those challenges require and will require over the next 4 years.
The two biggest challenges, well, there'll be three. It'll be to continue the decline in the crime rate, working with our neighborhoods, community policing. It'll be the river has made small steps with reductions in nitrogen and phosphorus, the wastewater treatment plant now. That litigation over, we're headed towards the building of another one. And it will be accessible base and coming out of the recession and the continuing to create jobs. Our unemployment rate in the county and the city is a little bit lower than the national average, so we still deal with that. But it really is figuring out what to do with a community that over the last 10 years in terms of jobs have lost places like Crown Court, Conceal, and Green Giant, and Campbell Soup, and Dresser Wayne, and Shoreland, all of those places that are people.
What can city government do about turning that around?
Well, I see this coming from my opponent, and I don't really talk much about my opponent, but it's business, business, business. Well, I'm the one that's worked with the Mayor's Business Roundtable. I'm the one that's worked with the Chamber of Commerce. I'm the one that's worked with downtown stakeholders. I'm the one that's worked with companies throughout the industrial park. In the last 5 years, we can point to 10, 12 businesses throughout the city that we can say came here. Some of them manufacturing and industrial up in the industrial park, some commercial entities like that. What they have said to me is there are certain things that they'd like us to do to make things more competitive for Salisbury. First thing we did already is drop the equivalent dwelling unit rate that you have to pay to hook up to city and water and sewer and services. Dropped it from around $9,000 to around $4,000. We went from the third highest EDU cost on the Delmarva Peninsula to the third lowest. I'm proud of that. That's what says to businesses that we're serious about you coming here. We stretched out those payments over 8 quarters. Most new businesses will fail in the first 2 years. The business sector said, spread it out for us so that we can make these payments over the course of the first 8 quarters. The other thing that we've got to do is we've got to look at a manufacturing tax exemption. It's an exemption that we give companies to write down the amount of loss that they have on property that they have bought over the previous year. We are not at the same level 100% across the board as other jurisdictions around us. I'm going to ask the City Council again to do that this year. I did last year. They didn't take it up. The other thing that we're going to do is very important for Pepsi, and it's very important for Purdue. People who have water and sewer rates, you pay for the amount of water that comes in, and the sewer rate is the same coming back out because it's assumed that whatever water you run will probably, the same amount of it will come back out into the system. Well, it's not the same for Pepsi, and it's not the same for Purdue because of the products they put out. So we're going to be introducing a wastewater unit credit for those companies. And there's about 7 other companies throughout the city that this would work for. Cadista up in the industrial park. Those ideas, the changing of our paving policy, that's come out of the business community asking us to do things. Those are the things that have been put out there. Some of them aren't getting a vote from the City Council. Some of them are getting a no vote from the City Council. And some of them will be new initiatives as the new budget comes into being. But it takes more than just saying, I'm going to be good for business to make business come. We still have to draw a ring around that downtown and take those EDUs that we talk about costing from the cost of them from Linens of the Week and bring them downtown and create an EDU-free zone. We've got to do that. We've got to spend more money on SWED. We've got to spend more money. It's about return on investment. It's like the tragedy that happened with Urban Salisbury. Urban Salisbury could show that the return on investment for the money that we gave them was a 6-to-1 or a 7-to-1 return. Yet the Salisbury City Council said, chop them, cut them off, don't do anything with them. It's very difficult in my position or any position as mayor for the public to realize that they want a vision out of the mayor. They want a cheerleader out of the mayor. They want somebody to stand up and say this has to happen. But in the end, I don't have a vote. I've had 2 separate councils since I got here. And it is what it is. Those situations are what were presented to me. And I said this past week at the NAACP forum that if anyone thinks I'm going to stop taking off my shoe and pounding it on the podium for people to get stuff done, they are mistaken. Because I believe in everything that we can be. I believe that we are not utilizing that waterfront property downtown. I believe that we are not holding people accountable for housing standards that make people live in safe places. I fought and fought and fought, and that thrift travel in came down where there was human trafficking, and that's what you have to do. You have to fight. You got to suit up. My mom said the other day, she was like, you've been through 2 snowstorms, a hurricane, and an earthquake, and that hurricane and that earthquake were in the same week. If you're not battle tested and ready by now, son, you're not going to be. So I look forward to walking up to people's doors. I look forward to these forums because I am going to be just as forthright as I have always been. Everywhere that I go, we have no polls here. The best I can tell you is the best polls you can get in town are the Center at Salisbury, the Walmart, and the Giant. That'll tell you how you're doing. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm doing okay, and I think we're doing okay, and I think we can spend another couple years trying to see some cranes downtown, trying to see some development get done, be a little healthier for business development, take a look at our neighborhoods and how we can make them safer and better places for our citizens to live. Keep working with our kids to try and make sure that when it gets to that middle school area where decisions are made about behavior and things of that nature, working with our partners at the Board of Ed, the disproportionate minority contact groups, all of that stuff I think is very, very important. I am blessed, Phil, that I get to work with people like John Pick, and I get to work with people like Debbie Stam, and I get to work with people like Rick Hoppus and Barbara Duncan and Lorraine Chambers, all of those people. It's clear what's happening in this election. If the crime rate were up by 40%, and we didn't have $16 million in surplus, we were negative $16 million, and the audit was late, and the river was dirtier, everybody'd be dumping that on my lap. Mm-hmm. So I need people to know that from my standpoint, the people who work for me are very clear about what my vision, what my work ethic is, and how fast I expect people to get things done. So I never thought that I'd have all the room in my brain for everything that I've learned over the last 4 years, and I think it's important to stick it out, finish some of this stuff, see if we can get some new stuff kick-started, and just keep going out there and working with the people who are trying to do good things. George Whitehead and Paula Morris and Andy Kitzrow and all they're doing for kids, all that Jamie Heater's doing for downtown with her Third Friday celebrations, all the people that are working at Poplar Hill Mansion. It is such, my schedule is, as the colloquialism is, it's off the chain. It's everywhere and all places, and I love to do it. I love to go and bound into a room and say how proud I am to be there, how honored I am to be asked to be a part of the things that go on in town, because I'm so proud of us and I'm so proud of what we do.
Well, you've been able to build some good relationships with some of the people you just mentioned, mm-hmm. some of the groups that you just mentioned, mm-hmm. like the university, mm-hmm. the hospital, and others. But it's interesting what you just said, because I remember sitting here interviewing people for office 4 and 8 years ago, and we've been here that long, mm-hmm. that the dirty river, the audit being late, mm-hmm. the crime rate being up, they were the major issues.
Those were the major issues.
So if you take them out of the equation, then what becomes the major issue?
I think what it's going to be, and I'm going to speak frankly and open with you about what I have to. This is going to be the mayor and the council can't get along because Jim can't get along with anybody. That's what you're going to hear. But when I look at the river, and I think when I sit in the room at one time, the people from the Environmental Trust, the people from GIS at the university, the people from the Maryland Coastal Bays Program, the people from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, the people from the Center for Watershed Protection, the people from the Nanticoke Watershed Alliance. When I sit in that room and you're trying to move all those people in the same direction, the University of Maryland Stormwater Utility Unit, when we're talking about water quality, plus you've got to work with neighborhoods, and you've got to work with the creek watchers, and you've got to make sure that everybody, what my job has been is to get all of those disparate groups who are doing separate things out there, bring them all in the room and say, how is it that we can help one another? It's the same thing with crime. You sit in a room with the sheriff, with the state's attorney, with the governor's office of crime control and prevention, parole and probation, the Department of Juvenile Services, Poplar Hill Pre-Release, Neighborhood Services and Code Compliance, the Salisbury Police Department, and everyone is sharing information about getting the most violent criminals off our streets. And then you have to pivot to work with the Chamber of Commerce Foundation that's helping Poplar Hill Pre-Release get people skills so that they don't commit crimes again, and we reduce our rates of recidivism. That is a hefty task. I find it exhilarating and fun. And that's because there are people in there who, for the good of moving things forward, are moving things forward. You know, you're going to hear this about council-mayor relations. You're going to hear this about this situation. But again, I say to you, and I say to our residents and the people watching, I don't have a vote. So when I give a set of neighborhood safe streets initiatives, and they sit there for months and years, and then I have the legal department taken out from under me and taken over and a new boss in another place, yeah, I'm going to take my shoe off and pound it on the podium. Because how tired are we of politicians who are mealy-mouthed and don't say anything? Mm-hmm. I guess, you know, coming up, and I guess you were around for some of that, Coming up, you know, I spent my time with William Donald Schaefer and Barbara Mikulski as a young person, and it was looked upon as having integrity, to speak your mind, to be honest. You know, you read some things that people say in the newspaper, you read the paragraph and go, what did they say? What did they say? They didn't answer the question. I'm always going to answer the question, and I'm always going to say what I think. I think it's got to be a frank response. I think it's got to be an honest response. And I have to tell you, if that makes people feel uncomfortable, I don't know what to do about that, except say that when three strikes legislation has been sitting out there for almost 2.5 years now, I'm going to say that it needs to move forward. When the legal department is taken away from the administrative side of the government, when about 70% of the work that the legal department does is on my side of the government, you know, I have to say that something has to be done. A 270-page downtown redevelopment plan endorsed by the Chamber of Commerce, by the Central City District Commission, by all of the stakeholders down there, and it took the Salisbury City Council about 23 minutes to say, oh, this isn't what we want. Don't bring something like this to us again. Yeah, I'm going to pound my foot on the table. I'm going to say, that is saying to all of the people who have formed these partnerships and put this hard work in that we're not interested in what you have to say. The people who have organized the skate park, waiting years for their spot and their time to come. Finally, the funding comes through, and our legislative branch says no. The people working on mountain biking paths, reestablishing them in the park, months and months and months of waiting. They get on the agenda. You know, the answer comes back as no. Affordable housing on Church Street, the answer comes back as no. And I believe we live in a community that says yes. You don't ever see George Whitehead or Paula Morris tell anybody no. They're out there pushing it each day. You know, you see Dr. Nalepa and Dr. Eschbach trying. The amazing things that those two entities are producing, not just financially, but culturally and scientifically for this community. Salisbury needs to step up and do its part to partner with them. And that is what I've been trying to do. But it does mean getting into that bureaucracy and pushing out things like RFPs for redevelopment and being there when this consortium of people talk about a new medical school coming to Salisbury. The city has to be right there, ready to do its part, not ready to nitpick and say no. And if my colleagues on the Salisbury City Council want to nitpick and say no, I'm going to call them out for that, because I think this community works too hard to move forward, to have people who are so disconnected from everyday struggles and lives of the people who are trying to improve our community. You know, it does make me angry. It does upset me. It does make my face. But it's because we are not accomplishing what it is I think we can accomplish. It makes me, for all the cheerleading and all the time you sit there and you feel the wind get taken out of your sails. You see the wind taken out of all the people who were involved in Urban Salisbury and all the people who were involved with the skate park and all the people who were involved with Homes for America trying to get more affordable housing for Salisbury, and they just walk away from here going, what's the matter with that place? And I don't like us to be in that. I don't like us to be seen in that light.
If the legislative branch and the executive branch share a similar vision, might have different ways to get there.
Well, we've talked about this before.
What specific things, starting...
Right. The people on the outside of government who are covering government, if it looks like the decisions are already made and there's agreement, then somebody must be doing something behind closed doors. So if there's agreement, you're not doing this under the light of day for the public to see. If you disagree and things don't get done, you're disagreeing just to be disagreeable. I don't think any way in politics today, with the media the way it is, and with the 24-hour cycle, and with the ability for everyone to be able to blog their opinions, I don't think there's anything government can do right. So you just move ahead and you do what the best is you think you can do, and you wait for elections to see whether or not people agreed with you. There have been several things that we have agreed with. The reduction in the capacity fees, the 60% reduction, which is good for business. 4 out of 5 of the members of the Salisbury City Council voted for that. That was something we did together. Mrs. Gardner stepping up to the plate saying, we know how to make Salisbury more business friendly. Mrs. Campbell, the only one voting against. You know, you look at the affordable housing that's going to go down on the river at River's Edge, right there on Fitzwater Street. 3 of the council members approved it, 2 didn't. I sort of abstained from the discussion because what happened was done behind closed doors, and nobody who worked for the city, none of the professionals who worked for us, knew what the deal was. But the deal has to pass the city council. So there's always, there's always that stuff going on. Today's news cycle is so inundated with national news and national tragedies. One of the things that's happening throughout the country is the amount of local news that's being reported is less and less and less. We see how the newspapers are struggling, even here with our 2 television stations, and how they have to go from, the C&D Canal in Delaware all the way down to the, to the edge of Virginia at the Bay Bridge Tunnel. It has to be hard to cover local issues, and I understand that. But I do believe that more education of our citizens and more the ability to use social media brings more participation in when we have the struggles that we have and the disagreements. But the disagreements are healthy. And that's why the governments are made the way they are and why there's checks and balances. So, I'm just going to continue to do my job as best I can. And if people want to send me back, I will appreciate that, and I will continue to serve them in that most impressive, exciting way that they can possibly hope for.
Great. Thank you for being here. We're going to give you a chance, as we have done everybody else, to pretend that's a door, and it just opened, and there's a registered voter on the other side, and you introduce yourself and tell them what you want to tell them.
Hey, it's Jim. I'm back again. This is probably the 19th election cycle I've showed up at your house, but this time again I'm back for myself. I just want to tell you that I think that there are very few times a politician can look you in the eye and tell you that I did exactly what I said I was going to do when I came into office. I'm proud of that, and I hope you can support me again this April.
Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Good to see you again.
It's always a pleasure. It's kind of hard drawing a word out of you, but I managed to do it.
Thank you.
And you are a great cheerleader for the city, and we have a lot to be proud of. So thank you for all you do.
April the 2nd, that's the important date. The city primary, February the 26th, there'll be no mayor's primary, but then again, April the 2nd, 7 to 7.
Good. All right. Well, thank you again for being on. And thank you for being with us here on Pack 14.
One-on-One is sponsored in part by a generous grant from PNC Bank.
For programming information, go online to pack14.org and select programming, and there you will learn when you can see the political forums that are being held regarding the city council races and the mayoral contest right here on Pack 14. Stay informed and be sure to vote. The primary election is February 26th, and the general election is April the 2nd.